Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm making this video because the Asperger's support group that I'm in, there are a lot of parents talking about their teenage kids. And so I guess, and how those kids are struggling. And so I'm sort of talking to the parents, and if any of the kids end up watching, I'm talking to you. So what I want to do, I just want to share a bit of sort of my story, because when I read these posts from parents, and I read some posts from um, guys and girls, mostly guys, sort of in their early 20s, and the things they're struggling with. It's a lot of the same stuff I struggle with. So I got diagnosed pretty late. I was nearly 31, so it's about 19 months ago, almost 2 years ago. I got diagnosed Asperger's and ADHD. Now, a month after that, my wife left, and she's never come back. And about 2 months after that, my brother stopped talking to me. He started going to a therapist, and apparently all of his anxieties and problems are my fault from being rough with him when we were kids. It's a whole thing in and of itself. But the reason I mention it is because the theme I guess I want to communicate to you guys is the longer you hide away in your rooms playing video games and avoiding real life, the more it's going to hit you when it catches up. So right from the outset, I'll say it's very, very unlikely you can hide away from reality for too long. Ultimately, life is going to come into conflict with who and how you are. And if you never confront your skill deficits, I'm worried you're going to end up experiencing the same sort of stuff I have or worse. So I was apparently rather high functioning masking, but that's not always the best thing, because I flew under the radar enough to never get diagnosed, but I was bad enough that I pissed off the vast majority of people I came across, never fully understanding why. So I struggled socially from my earliest memories. I remember going to, here in Australia, we have a place called Soft Play, which is essentially like a kid's, I don't know what you call it. It's a kids thing that you go to, and there's like soft balls and jumping castles, soft mats and slides, anyway, it's a place where kids go to play and parents can zone out. At the age of 4, I was picking fights with kids because I wanted to physically, and it's weird because I still vaguely remember this. I just had so much pent up frustration. It felt cathartic to hit someone. Now, obviously, that's not healthy, but I was 4. Being diagnosed has helped me understand, that is me not understanding the wide variety of emotions I was feeling, and that overwhelm, that lack of understanding translated to aggression. Now, obviously, I stopped that, suffice for my brother. I stopped that at school. I never got into fights at school. I realized that my mouth was probably a stronger weapon than my hands. And I struggled with people. I got picked on a lot. I made efforts, but they are often backfired. I still made friends, but it was hard. It was really, really hard. And I end up hiding away from people quite a lot. I'm reading a book called The Complete Guide to Asperger's. It's on Audible. I've got it on my phone. It's about 18 hours long. It's good so far. And one of the key symptoms or signs I kind of talk about, coping mechanisms, if you will, for kids with Asperger's, is they often retreat into their imagination. They create their own little imaginary world, and that helps them cope with the difficulties of their real world. Now, I did that distinctly. My first email address was myrefuge_myimagination@hotmail.com. I still remember it. And it's so funny that I heard that in the book, because that was true. I would just retreat into my mind all the time. Now, why am I saying all this? I'm trying to build a narrative of, I'm trying to communicate that I think I understand where a lot of these kids are at, where a lot of you are at. And I would play a lot of video games. I made friends. I had a couple of friends. I had one friend, and I genuinely liked this guy, but one big reason I liked having sleepovers at his house is I could stay up to 3 a.m. and play on his Xbox and play Halo 3. Because I got such a dopamine high from versing other people and winning. Probably because that was one of the few domains that, in my entire life, probably the only domain in my life where I felt like I'm better than at least 75-80% of the players on here. And I craved that because it scratched an itch in my head. Fast forward, I met my now ex-wife at 18. Quite pretty, she still is. And she actually liked me. Now, I'd had one or two girlfriends before that, but they didn't last very long. I broke them off. I seemed to do well in the first few months, and then people realize what I'm actually like. It's sort of the narrative I tell myself. But we met, and you could tell the autism, I'm just info dumping, but I'm trying to build a narrative so I can make a point, because I don't want to make my point without giving you the context, because otherwise the kids listening are going to be like, why the hell should I listen to this guy? So bear with me. And so I met her, and we got attached way too quickly. I virtually moved in most nights staying at her house with her family within the first couple of weeks of us being together. And so looking back, there was definitely an unhealthy attachment for both of us. I'm not entirely sure what it was for her. Maybe it was an older boy. I don't know what it was. But I was devoted to her. She was pretty devoted to me. And a big part of it for me looking back was, I wouldn't say settling, because I genuinely did love her, but it was very much I'm getting validation. That was the big thing. I got validation, and I got sort of emotional support from this person. Too much. I wasn't my own person. A lot of my identity and my confidence was wound up in this person. So I got married young, and we really had no money. I struggled with work. I struggled with energy. I struggled with pushing my comfort zone. Like it was massive for me to get uncomfortable, but sort of a blessing in disguise, because I was married and because I desperately wanted to move out of home, because I kept conflicting with my parents, because I felt they never understood me. I moved out, as we got married, and that sort of forced me to be like, you have to get a job, you have to do this. My hand still got held a lot of the way. My first house was 2 doors away from the house I grew up in. People that my parents knew, they were renting out that house. So I was still leeching off them in many ways. I wasn't my own man. And at the time I was like, you're young, you've done this early, it's okay to sort of take a bit of charity. One job I got, groundskeeping in a school, was sort of handed to me on a platter. I didn't hunt for that, it was sort of just given to me. And then I started having kids. And I'd studied fitness years prior, and I decided around the same time I started having kids, I was going to start a business, because I thought I can get more money per hour than what I'm doing for the groundskeeper. I had no concept of how hard that was going to be. So I had kids, started a business, developed a crippling anxiety, depression, and insomnia. I had chronic insomnia for over 5 years. At time, I never got drunk, I never took drugs, and I think part of that is probably the ASD forcing, I like routines and things, but I could not handle the adult world. There are some elements of how I handle myself I'm quite proud of, and there are other elements of how I handle myself that I'm utterly ashamed of. I lost it with my kids when they were little, and I got rough with them when I shouldn't have. I punched a door and broke a knuckle. And I can say things like, I was undiagnosed, it was like 3 a.m, my kid was screaming, I haven't slept properly in weeks, months, maybe years at that point. I was completely frazzled, and I took it out on a door, better than anyone else. I never beat my wife or anything like that, nothing like that. But I broke my knuckle, that was fun. And then I got diagnosed, but by that point the damage was already done. The 2 people closest to me, my wife and my brother, all left. And so now I'm juggling having my kids 50% of the time, running a business. I found out some things that crippled me after all this happened. I went to a mental hospital for 2 weeks. The point of all this, the point of all this is I attribute, looking back, trying to analyze, how did I get here? Why am I here? I attribute a lot of this to the fact that, oh, and I should add, when I was supposed to be working on the business at home, I would get so stressed out and so anxious and didn't know how to function because executive functioning deficiencies. I would play video games for hours while my wife was at work and while my kids were at daycare. I would play video games instead of working because it gave me peace. It was the only peace that I had. But all that did was delay my problems. All that did was delay my problems. And I say all this to say, as I was saying a moment ago, my biggest issues, I genuinely think, stem from I was not ready and equipped to handle adult life. I ignorantly threw myself in the deep end. I had short-term pleasures. Yeah, I have a wife that I find attractive, that I click, I guess, good enough with, that I can sleep with. That brings me a lot of comfort. I got that early and easy, and I moved out, and I can point to being neurodivergent and going, I didn't know any better, and I'm starting with these deficiencies, and that's all true. But if you never address them, if you stay hidden in your room, if your life is you do the bare minimum to get through school or whatever is sort of required of you, just so you can go and do your real passion, which is hiding away, wasting so much of your youth, these formative years, on video games. Now, I've been able to come back to video games. I had to uninstall them. I had to delete them. I had to throw them all out for a long time. I've been able to come back. I can play for 30, 60 minutes, relax, and then put it away, and I'm fine. Because it's no longer a coping thing. It's no longer an addiction. But when it was one of the few sources of pleasure and validation I got in my life, that's incredibly unhealthy. And my fear for you guys is if you stay in that place and you stay hidden away, eventually life is going to hit you. And the responsibilities and the demands of the real world are going to knock at your door and be like, let's go. It's time to pay up. And you're going to go, I have no idea how to handle this. And that's when you enter a real kind of hell. Right now you might be depressed and anxious and socially anxious and stressed out. And let me just say, it is nothing compared to the pain you will endure when you have to pay the debt of procrastination. There's a great saying, I love this: two types of pain, the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Oh my word, please take on the pain of discipline. This is actually why I've stuck with my fitness business and I love it. A big reason for that is staying committed to the gym is the pain of discipline. Pushing yourself in the gym is physically uncomfortable. It is unpleasant. This is another reason I put myself in situations like I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a year ago and I get my ass handed to me. But that's another great thing because it's pushing deficits that I have, limitations that I have. It's making me uncomfortable socially, and I'm a lot better now. But it hurts and it sucks. And my brain freaks out when people get on top of my face and smother me and I can barely breathe. Like, that's actually terrifying, but I don't tap unless I absolutely have to. So my brain just has to, it's exposure therapy. But the pain of regret is excruciating. And what I don't want, please hear this, what I don't want is for you to hear this and feel worse about yourself. And now, like, you've got this insurmountable challenge of, well, I'm terrified to go out and meet people, and I'm terrified of all these things. And now you're telling me that if I stay here where I'm semi-safe, like I think my pain is bad now, I'm going to experience much, much worse pain later on. So I'm screwed. My life is not worth living. Like, I can understand how you could go down that spiral. I totally understand how you could go there. I've been there. Part of the reason I checked myself into a mental hospital is because I was starting to drive around. I was driving around on the phone to Lifeline. It's like a suicide support line we have here in Oz. I was looking for sections of railroad tracks where the trains aren't slowing down between stations, where I knew that they'd be going fast. because I thought I want to go quick and easy, and I'm going to find these places to do it. I'm doing the best I've probably ever done in my life right now. And I don't want to say what's worked for me is going to work for everyone. I'm my own person. I have my own personality. I have my own strengths and weaknesses and my own way of looking at ththings. I'm just trying to share my experience because when I hear about these young guys and girls, but especially the guys, because that's what I relate to. I mean, I have daughters, so I care about girls. But anyway, you get me. When I hear about that stuff, there's a deep part of me that just breaks every time. That's like, man, I don't want you to be there because I don't want you to go through what I've been through. So, what is the solution? What piece of advice do I have to offer? The piece of advice I have to offer is lean into your anxieties. And again, this is I think so much is like the gym, analogies with the gym. The gym, week 1 you can curl 5 kilos. That's like 10 pounds for you guys who use a very weird numerical system, weight system, imperial. You start with 5 and the muscle goes, that was hard. And you have to stop at some point because the muscle goes, I can't take any more of this today. I can't take any more of this today. You come back next week. Still on 5 kilos, but maybe now you can do an extra couple of reps. That's all for today. Next week, come back. Now you can do 6 kilos. The reps come down. Next week, 6 kilos. Reps go back up. Next week, 7 kilos. Reps come down. See what I'm saying? The way we grow in the gym is it's just exposure therapy. We call it progressive overload, but to translate it to like psychology, it's exposure therapy. That's all it is. It's just exposure therapy. You just make the exposures gradually much harder. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's fine. I have found the same thing for me. Leaning into my anxieties. For example, I feel like I'm ready to start meeting people. So I downloaded Hinge, and you're putting out likes and trying to, I'm setting up my profile, I'm setting up photos, and I'm like, geez, you're an ugly mug. You don't have any good photos. So you're sending out likes, nothing. Silence. No one interacts. One person, well, I've had a couple of people interact, and I've said no to a couple for my own reasons, but one person liked something of mine, and we got chatting. She seems very, very lovely. And so I have a date next week. Yippee. First one in a very, 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 very long time. And that's uncomfortable. There's part of me that's like, flee. You know what I mean? But because I'm feeling that flee, I'm like, this is exactly what you need. There's a great clip of Seinfeld, you can go look it up, where George does everything opposite. It's quite funny. You can look it up on YouTube. It's quite funny. But it's also unbelievably profound. If your impulse is, shitty day at school, depressed, whatever's going on, I want a 6-hour video game sesh. What would be the opposite of that? Going for a walk in the sun. Call a friend. Start going to the gym. And if you feel stupid going to the gym, work on your social skills at the same time. Find someone you go in, you find someone who's bigger than you and say, hi, I'm such and such. I'm new to the gym. I have Asperger's. Most people don't give a shit, right? If you're honest, there's no way you lose. If they're like, no, I don't want to help you, then you've just learnt, you've exposure therapy to a rejection, which sucks, but the more people say no to you, you kind of stop caring. But a lot of time they'll be like, hey, welcome. Like, man, I started like you. I started like skinny or overweight or whatever. I started weak. Start somewhere. And this is not a plug. This is not a plug. This is the direction I'm trying to take my business. I want to sort of help young guys use the gym, the experience of the gym, to go through sort of the pain, the grind, the discipline, the delayed gratification. And then you're like, oh, wow, I did it with the gym. Awesome. Go do it with your studies. Go do it with a relationship. Go do it with whatever. That's been my story and the story of many of my clients. So find a local PT. Oftentimes face-to-face is better, right? Find someone who really cares. You can view it like there's a hairline difference between anxiety and excitement. They're very similar in many ways. So if you want to be prepared for life, start looking at your patterns of living right now and look at what things are genuinely holding you back. Maybe you need to do a course, depending on your age. Maybe some extracurricular stuff at school. I actually did drama in high school. I think part of the reason I enjoyed drama so much is because being so high functioning, I was quite good at masking, which is a form of acting, really. So acting, especially comedy stuff, you can be ridiculous and praised for it because the context calls for it. And so I actually got a good amount of sort of social confidence through doing some drama stuff. So if you can change your environment, sign up for a class, get a PT, sign up for a course, change your environment, create an obligation that you go to weekly. And it's just like the bicep curl example that I gave, just gradual exposure. But life is going to demand certain things of you. And if you're feeling incredibly ill-equipped, find someone to talk to. I'm happy to, with what limited time I have, if someone really wants someone to talk to, I'm happy to try and organize a time to talk to some of these young guys free. I don't care. I just want to sort of share whatever wisdom I've got to help with this. But that's 22 minutes. I got other work to do. So that's sort of my story. I hope it helps. Yeah. Questions and comments below. You know how YouTube be. Thanks for listening.